Hello everyone, I'm Kohsen Handa from the Noosology Research Institute. Since this is my first research video, how about starting with an abstract overview of Noosology, instead of diving into the details right from the start? Today, I'd like to introduce the core ideas behind Noosology within a philosophical context, occasionally incorporating an academic approach along the way. So, let's begin. As you know, philosophy is said to have originated in ancient Greece. You might have heard of the Ionian school of philosophy, which is said to have started with theories. He was followed by his disciple Anaximander, Heraclitus, who is famous for the saying, "everything flows," and Empedocles, who regarded the four elements, fire, earth, air, and water, as the principles of the world's function. They all emerged around the 6th century BCE, a particularly remarkable period in Greek thought. The word nous in Noosology originally comes from the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras, who also lived during this period. So, what does nous mean? To explain this, let's go back to the 6th century BCE in Greece. Philosophers in ancient Greece were eager to understand this issue. What was the beginning of the universe? If the universe has a beginning, what exactly was the principle behind its initial movement? This concept was referred to as the arche, meaning the origin of all things. According to theories, the origin of all things is water. This is well known, isn't it? Anaximander said that there is no such thing as the origin of nature. Rather, it is infinite. I believe this idea was influenced by Parmenides' thought, what is, and what is not, is not. To express this infinity or boundlessness, Anaximander used the word apeiron. For Empedocles, it was fire, earth, air, and water, or what we call the elements. This concept of fire, earth, air, and water was later incorporated into Western mystical thought and has become essential for modern occultism. As stated above, those ancient philosophers developed various theories from their own standpoints. However, among them, one philosopher had a notable idea. His name was Anaxagoras. He proclaimed that the beginning of all things is intelligence. He used the word nous to denote this intelligence. Unlike other philosophers, Anaxagoras attempted to introduce an ideological principle into nature. Yet we should note that his definition of intelligence is slightly different from how we define it today. In other words, it is an intelligence that is inherent in nature itself. Fascinating, isn't it? It seems that in the mindset of the ancient Greeks, there was no separation between humans and nature, unlike the way we perceive it today. In this way, we might better understand why he introduced the concept of intelligence at the beginning of the universe. For the ancient Greeks, nature was likely seen as an entity where humans and nature worked together in unison, without a clear distinction between the two. Such an ancient Greek concept of nature is commonly referred to as physis. It is the root of words like physical and physics, and so on. The core idea of physis is quite similar to the Japanese word jinen. In Japanese, the word for nature, shizen, can be read in two ways, shizen or jinen. This is the same jinen as in jinenjo, the type of yam that has more earthy smell, richer taste, and thicker texture compared to ordinary yams. Japanese word jinen means something that makes itself so, exactly as the characters ji, one's own, and nen, to be so, suggest. This reflects how the ancient Japanese viewed nature. The thing makes itself what it is. This Japanese view of nature resonates with the ancient Greek concept of physis. Anaxagoras likely envisioned an inherent intelligence within nature, suggesting that nature expresses its form from within, as if a flower blossoms, revealing its appearance through this innate intelligence. He probably imagined nature in this way. Of course, for the ancient Greeks, human beings were also one expression of nature. Does that make sense? This is a key point. I'm not talking about intelligence in a way that is often discussed as something that only humans possess. What I'm referring to is something different. The intelligence that Anaxagoras refers to is a fundamental force that creates the harmonious order inherent in nature. Let me emphasize once more. This is not the same as the common notion of intelligence we have today. In this sense, nous is often referred to as divine intelligence, cosmic mind, or active intelligence in modern interpretations. Scientists may refer to it as something great, suggesting that Mother Nature holds an intelligence beyond human comprehension. Noosology, if translated literally, refers to the logos inherent in nous, meaning the logic of nous. Therefore, it could be described as an intellectual endeavor to clarify the logic behind the concept of nous as envisioned by Anaxagoras, and to somehow revive this nous within human thought in a manner that suits the 21st century. However, some of you might be starting to have a small question at this point. Why does Handa focus on a minor philosopher like Anaxagoras? When we talk about ancient Greek philosophers, the first names that usually come to mind are Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and so on. I understand what you mean. Let me explain why. In a sense, Noosology inherits philosophy of Heidegger. That is the reason. Heidegger thoroughly criticized the history of Western philosophy after Socrates as a history of the forgetting of being. This being is distinct from individual beings. I will explain more about the meaning of this term, the forgetting of being, in future videos of the Noosology Research Institute series. To put it simply, there is an enormous invisible rift between Anaxagoras and the well-known ancient Greek philosophers such as Socrates and Plato when it comes to the principles of thought. Enormous rift like this. To explain it more clearly, it goes like this. The difference lies in whether humans are seen as part of nature, or whether nature is considered as an object of thought, with the thinking human being viewed as separate from nature. More directly, it's a question of whether the philosophy views the subject and object as unified, or whether it sees them as distinct and separate. In other words, ancient Greek philosophy split into two entirely different paths due to the decisive rift between Anaxagoras and Socrates. This also relates to the presence of Pythagoras. I won't go into that today though. However, in our current era, the mathematical understanding originating from Pythagoras has completely dominated our view of the world, hasn't it? We now only see nature as mere matter, or as energy that has been quantified. Science, of course, plays a central role in shaping this perspective. But this wasn't the case in ancient Greece before the rise of Pythagoras and Socrates. For them, ancient Greeks, nature was considered more of a spiritual essence. The idea of nature as something material, separate from humanity, didn't exist. Anaxagoras is said to have been born around 500 BCE, while Socrates was born around 470 BCE. They were about 30 years apart in age, roughly a generation apart, like father and son. Even though both are classified as ancient Greek philosophers, there is a fundamental divide between them. An insurmountable wall. Now, let me explain in more detail what these differences are. As mentioned by researcher Takahashi in his video, Socrates was initially thrilled by Anaxagoras' introduction of the conceptual principle of nous to explain nature. There is even an anecdote that Socrates eagerly rushed to buy and read Anaxagoras' book on nature. Well, he must have been an ardent fan. However, there is also an anecdote that Socrates couldn't hide his disappointment after reading the book, as it contained nothing concrete about nous at all. Whether or not this is the reason, Socrates' philosophy shifted its focus from nature to human beings. This is evident in his famous sayings, such as the unexamined life is not worth living, and an unjust law is still a law. Socrates was a philosopher who emphasized how humans should live, focusing on justice, virtue, ethics, and wisdom within human society, rather than exploring the order of the natural world. Most of us today would consider this to be an important rule of philosophy in its own right. However, From the perspective of physics, which I mentioned earlier, the situation is quite different. From Socrates onward, ancient Greek philosophy shifted from a philosophy of nature to one centered on human beings, focused on judgments of right and wrong. In other words, a philosophy rooted in subjectivity. As we can easily understand, there is no inherent good or evil in nature. Furthermore, nature does not make judgments about what is right or wrong. In this sense, Socrates' philosophy became human-centered and ceased to explore physics, the realm where nature and humanity are united. And it was Heidegger who offered a scathing critique of this shift. Do you see his perspective? Is it truly possible to re-establish the philosophy of physics as the pre-Socrates Greek philosophers once explored? In this age dominated by scientific dogmatism, can we create a new perspective on nature? Noosology envisions an entirely new form of intelligence within Anaxagoras' concept of nous, to create a philosophy of physics, and strives to bring this vision to fruition. In other words, it seeks to develop a philosophy that transcends humanity, a post-human philosophy. This is the ultimate objective of Noosology. So, I wrap things up for today. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again.